الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه. This is a question. This is a question about epistemological effects of postmodernism on Islamic jurisprudence. So, by jurisprudence, I guess they mean fiqh, the branch of Islamic discipline which deals with the actions and Islamic rulings about different actions and their context, etc. So, I mean, the question a bit too broad in the sense that it presumes that there's something called postmodernism, and people agree with what postmodernism is, and people agree that postmodernism has some epistemological effects, and what are those effects, etc. So I'll just try to articulate my own thinking if there is anything on that. So fiqh, I don't know, jurisprudence, I'll treat it as fiqh. And postmodernism, personally for me, postmodernism, if there is anything called postmodernism, it is different from modernism only to the extent when we talk about at the level of justification. So how to justify modernism? Postmodernism and modernists disagree on that. Generally, I would say modernists claim that you can have a universalist justification or even absolute justification of modernism. On the other hand, postmodernism still believe in basic core modernist epistemology and values, but say that you can't just justify it universally. At most, what you can do is to justify it locally. Okay, so when we talk about the epistemological effect of postmodernism on Islamic disciplines, unless we are talking about a justificatory level, there won't be much effects, because there's no difference between modernism and postmodernism as far as the epistemology is concerned, apart from justification, at the level of justification. So that's the first point. The second point is, when it comes to modernism, the traditional Islamic scholars, and those are the one only I care about. I don't care about what these doctors and other people do in universities. They have no value whatsoever as far as Islamic disciplines are concerned. So I'm going to limit what I say to Islamic scholars. So Islamic scholars normally, they stay aloof from and shield Islamic discipline from any modernist intervention, because they don't deal with modernism. So sort of they have created their own enclaves where they can pretend or they can sort of as if modernism doesn't exist. So in that sense, modernism doesn't really affect much on the internal goings of Islamic disciplines, albeit indirectly, because we are still living in an environment in which modernity is affecting everybody else. But Islamic disciplines in that sense are generally, including fiqh, has very minimal epistemological effects. But the price for that is that you, in Islamic fiqh, for example, there's no discourse on how to judge modernity in its parts or as a whole, etc. Okay, so this is the preamble. Having said that, now we can rephrase the question: are there any epistemological effects of modernity on Islamic discipline? I think on fiqh, for example, I think the only area in which there is a clear influence is economics and Islamic economics, which is not really part of fiqh because it's not taught in as such in traditional curriculum, but those Islamic scholars, for example, Mufti Usmani was a traditionally trained Mufti and all that, and Hanafi Faqih. He gives fiqh rulings and general guidelines on Islamic economics, especially Islamic banking and all the instruments used in banking system. And I think because of this interaction, there has been influence on this part of Islam fiqh from modernist and postmodernist epistemologies, and it has been generally disastrous and negative because those people who are involved in, like Mufti Usmani and his family, and they are, employed and funded directly or indirectly by banks, mainstream banks, including Jewish banks and Western banks, to justify their version of Islamic banking and Islamic economy. So in this context, fiqh has become the means for justifying capitalism, finance, and individual banking instruments and interactions, and give come up with Shari tricks or hila to make mainstream economic and banking and finance as Islamically justified. And I think it had a effect on, not on fiqh as such, because fiqh is generally as it is taught, they don't teach Islamic economics. If they teach part of economy, that's part of fiqh and traditional fiqh. They don't deal with current issues directly. But in Mufti Usmani's madrasa, for example, they have courses in Islamic economics and they teach a bit of economics as well, but that's separate from fiqh. So faqih comes and sort of justifies Islamic banking, mainstream banking, etc. But within fiqh, they don't deal with those issues as such. But so the effect has been the so-called new discipline, which is not part of traditional fiqh education, even in those madrasas which actually participate in this activity, and not all, for example, not even all Deobandi madaris do that, because they're part of Deobandi tradition, which has written detailed fatwa against Islamic economics and against Mufti Osmani's and his family's justification of the so-called Islamic Bank. But if you look at Mufti Osmani's justification of its economics and capitalism, for example, he basically uses Adam Smith's epistemology and accepted most part of it with some amendment. For example, he thinks that capitalism is a natural system, so we don't need to reject capitalism, only need to limit it with Shari limits. He thinks that Islam is not a system, for example, and it can live with capitalist system as long as it is demarcated by. So, for example, in economic epistemology, he sort of accepts the scarcity principle as the natural principle, like there are unlimited wants and there is scarce resources, and the purpose of economic activity is to overcome scarcity, etc. So there has been a huge epistemological effect on Islamic economics, but not directly on fiqh as such. The other effect has been on politics, for example, in Maulana Maududi's justification of democracy and liberalism and human rights. But that hasn't affected the traditional Islamic fiqh, because normally in fiqh they don't deal with political issues anymore, except very, in a traditional, very roundabout way. So we haven't developed a fiqh of modern politics. So in that sense, there has been effect on Islamic thinking as such, but not on traditional Islamic discipline directly. So I think that's basically my gut response at this point. Okay, thank you.